I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but I just did. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on finishing up these porches, getting the steel on the roof and on the ceiling. But first, Greg and I need to finish up these soffit fascias so we can put all of our trims on. So let's go ahead and get into this. So these soffits, this is all LP SmartSide soffit as well. And honestly, it's really nice because even if your main frame, like the sub frame underneath this soffit is not perfectly straight, this stuff is like dead nuts. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but I just did. And you can make sure that this is perfectly straight. So when you come put your fascia on, it does take away if there's any sort of like innies in your fascia. Are you good up top, Greg? You need to put your hand up there and make sure you're good because you're out. Right there. You sure? Yeah. Okay. See, like right here. So Greg is perfect up there. I'm perfect down there. It's a great straight, but right in here, from this guy to up here, it looks to be just about, you know, just a little bit. But when we go put our, here, Greg, you can take this.
I can't.
You can't? Woo! But I think you get the point. It kind of takes out the imperfections and allows you to have like a really laser straight fascia board, which we're all about. You good?
Yep.
There, that gotta help. All right, we got that soffit done, but because this is all dripping back here, so we got some morning condensation on the roof dripping off, and we're gonna go ahead and be smart. We're gonna work on the ceiling since it's nice and dry under here. So what Greg and I gotta do first is we need to trim around the perimeter. We've got J-channel. That's gonna go around the outside, and then for some reason, my metal supplier sent us these trims. They were supposed to be 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch. This is 1.5 inches by 10 inches. So I'm not really sure why, but that goes up here against this wall because when you're putting metal on a ceiling in one piece, if you have two J channels, think about it. You've got to get into this J channel and you'd have to get into this J channel on this side. You can't really flex a short piece of steel very easily. So what we do is we put this, you'll see, we'll put this flat piece of metal and it'll look like a piece of J because we'll end up putting some trim underneath of it later. So it's a little trick. Don't run all sides of J, just 3, and the other side will be a flat piece of trim that'll make it look nice and clean. Now you can two-piece this, just cut this and run this one and then cut this next one, but honestly I find it almost just as easy to go ahead and two-piece it. So we're just gonna go ahead and mark it for a, one-piece it. We're just gonna mark it, bend it around, and avoid having to cut it down and then hold up two different pieces. So that's gonna give us kind of a nice seamless wraparound J. Greg, are you able to hold this up in that corner over there? Okay, cool. Man. So this is nice just because, I mean, yeah, I could have cut this, but now it's just already done all at the same time, nice and tight in the corner, and that's what we'll do around this whole perimeter. This is pretty nice. This Milwaukee stapler, we've got the DeWalt and the Milwaukee, and this one just about made me a liar. Shoots like perfectly, even in this 29 gauge steel. So the DeWalt sometimes does not puncture it all the way. This one does a really nice job setting this staple in. All right, little trick for you guys while we're doing this. So I gotta get this piece in here, and over in that corner I did a one-piece wraparound. When I put this guy in here, it's only gonna have like 9 inches left over. When I wrap that around and have a joint 9 inches from the corner, that's kind of a silly thing to do. So this one I will one piece. And instead of pulling a tape measure, trying to get an exact measurement, I'm just gonna put my piece up there, flip it around, okay? I did a 180 on it and I actually marked the side that's gonna get cut off. So tape measures are great, but if you can put a piece of material in place and get an exact dimension, it's always gonna be a lot more consistent and accurate. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always have inchitis or read the wrong side of the tape. Right, Greg? You never do that, do you? No, never. So now we got a perfect cut. And it's factory to factory because I did the 180 flip before I marked it. All right, now you can kind of see how excessive and large this piece of trim is. So my metal supplier kind of overdid it. This was just supposed to be 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. And now you can probably see our steel's gonna go into these J's, but it's just gonna go up into this. Because if that was a J channel too, it would be not impossible we've done it, but this is way easier. And when it's all done, there'll be a piece of SmartSide trim right underneath it, finishing it all off. So Greg, one little piece and let's get some steel. Oh, that's a lot. Yeah. It's drying up pretty good over here. We're just grabbing the center mark. So that center board, that's a screw line just for extra support. And we're gonna punch it. That way it is dead straight. Well, it'll be as straight as our porch is because we'll shove this end into our J channel. And by default, it should make all of our screw lines nice and straight. 45? Okay, so 45. All we're gonna do is just mark right out here next to the rib. 45. 45. 45. And then we're just gonna use, it's a scratch all, nothing special. It's got a nice sharp point to it. Always make sure that every sheet is nice and straight. Otherwise, if you don't check your ends and then you go put a punch row in, there's gonna be a sheet that's gonna be bad, so. Yeah, we go right through the bottom. So all 8 sheets, just like that. A lot of people are gonna say, why don't you just, use a drill with a drill bit, drill a nice hole, it's easier. It's actually not, in my opinion, and little tiny drill bits, if you're not super careful, if you go through a pile of steel, they will walk on you. Don't ask how we know, we've tried it, and it can be done, but this is clean. There's no little shavings or burrs, so we always use a punch instead of a drill. Do what you want. If you've always used a drill, that's fine. People always come at me in the comments like, just drill it. Whatever, dude, I don't care. We punch, it just works good. You ready? Something you want to check is always lay out all of your metal. That way, things will stay where you want them. So a panel of steel is usually 36 inches center rib to center of the outside ribs. But we also want to know how big our I guess it's our siphon leg over here is, which it's 1 inch. So that means when we lay this thing out, we're gonna wanna mark 37 inches so we know where the edge is. Greg, we're going to cut this first one down, so let's go ahead and just get a 37-inch mark. And then we should be able to square this. Okay, so there's 37, and you can get that measurement back for a cutoff. What we got there? 31 and a half. So we'll just take off 31 and 3/8. All right, you want to hold me there, and I will mark this out. So now that we have this marked as our first leading edge, Greg's gonna hold me the tape there, and I'm gonna mark out 36 inches because each sheet has 36 inches of coverage. And this is very important. People that don't mark out their steel, you're gonna have issues. Well, you have a very good chance of having issues. Okay, so we gotta mark the post side also. Because we squared up this porch, we know we can go ahead and mark equally off both sides, and the sheets should run nice and square. So we're just gonna mark the same exact thing on this outside, and then we'll start putting some steel up. 3/8. So, good thing homeowner just came out and reminded me of the ceiling lights, and when we laid this out, we laid it out, because I told you it's very important to lay it out so that everything is where you want it. Well, we were laying it out so that the center of the whole porch had a rib on it, and that was gonna give us nice even spacing. Well, he's got a light right in the middle there, and we would have had an issue putting the light on either side of the rib and it wouldn't have been centered. So we shifted all of our marks 4.5 inches. Because these rib spacings are perfectly 9 inches, 4.5 is gonna get us to the center of a flat. So instead of coming down here and ripping this off, we're actually gonna shift this whole sheet over 4.5 inches, which means now I just gotta rip this, this first good leg off and we should be good to go. Good thing I cut that little extra off, huh? Why is it, what are we, tighten here or something? I don't see my mark on that end or this end. Okay, so because we shifted this over and we are going to a new dimension, it actually changed where this was going to be, and we would have to cut off this whole rib. The problem is whenever you put a flat, especially like a flat that has no rib near it, into a J channel, it can be kind of wavy and not look perfect. So Greg's idea, which was a good one, was leave this rib on. In fact, we're going to bend it up to a 90, and it's going to give us a nice tight 90-degree bend with these benders, rollers, which should keep the panel nice and stiff and look really good. So now that bend up should keep this edge nice and stiff, and we should be able to get it into that J right where we want it. I think we can push it in there, Greg. Yeah. Yeah, these benders don't do a perfectly tight 90 sometimes. Otherwise, you run the risk of scratching the metal. So, all right, well, I guess. Okay, we're gonna make sure it's tight to the wall or the post. Okay, I see my mark. Yeah, this will tighten right into that. So see this bend? That's gonna go right into there. And it's a little tight because our bend isn't perfectly 90, so the metal is forcing this sheet back out, but it'll go right in there. See that? That's gonna be a tough one. And then this will make this first sheet nice. Yep, never be the wiser. All right, now we're off to the races. Let's run these. So this one here, you can see these light boxes. This is what we're trying to line up. We've got a 9-inch rib. So there'll be a rib right here. So right here will be a nice flat to cut out. And then customer can just grab this wire, hook up his light. Actually, I don't know where that goes. Oh, it's just tucked up there. And that'll fit right there. They're just those little wafer LEDs. So let's go. All right, now, what I always do is over here into those J's, it's gonna be nice and tight. It doesn't move too much. So our goal is to hit this side. So we got our mark. We're just gonna move the sheet right to that mark and then put a screw in. Now that'll hold it because it's in this J. And what we've learned is we got to make sure that this panel is not flexing. If this panel flexes, it can move where this is supposed to be and it does not look as good. So it's always important to kind of keep the panel up where it goes about. And boom, there's our mark. Always also got to make sure that we push this panel all the way tight to this J channel. Otherwise, these lines right here will not line up, and that's the important thing that we try to maintain there. So, you like it there? You good?
Just keep that in.
I'm perfect, dude. Money. Wait. Whoa. Go back. Go back.
I'm too short for this.
All right. Anytime we have a door or window in the way, as you can see, we're sitting on this, which means like we can't put it up through this area. So we slide it in, but this requires a little trick. So we're gonna take a little piece of flashing, and right here we have to get the good rib over top of this siphon rib. And to make it easy, you just shove a little piece of metal in here, you'll see. Okay. There we go. So that gets it over that rib without damaging anything. And make sure it's tight in our J. right on our mark. Okay, cool. Yep, just like that. Yeah. Atta boy. Nice. So now you look into this corner in here and it's perfectly tight because of that 90-degree bend down. If we wouldn't have done that, if we just cut the sheet, it would not have looked good. So it's a good little trick for you. So let's go ahead and get this all screwed off so it looks good now. I'm just not sure I like this drill that much. Yeah, I don't think I would buy it. That is for sure. So we got our soffit on and the roof was leaking. So we said, you know what, let that drip off dry. So we went ahead and put in a metal ceiling real quick. Lift with your back.
Oh, my triceps cramping. Oh.
What the? All right, now that this is all dried off, we got that ceiling done, we're gonna go ahead and work on this roof. But before we can put the roof on, we need our fascia trim because in order to put the roof, we need our drip edge, and the drip edge goes over the fascia. It'd just be easier for us if we go ahead and get this on. So we'll go ahead and do our fascia real quick. It's pretty easy anyway. Greg, fascia time, huh? So I'm gonna get mine on the face, Greg, right where I want it. Flush on the top. You good? Okay. Things we're just gonna go every 2 foot. And this is where our gutter will get tucked right up under here so that all that water comes off, hits this, and drips right into the gutter. 130.5. Something that has actually changed, I don't know if it's official, but I was told it's coming, is when you're doing LP SmartSide trims, everybody's used to that 1/8 inch gap, 3/16 gap, whatever, especially on a fascia where your trim is gonna go and have the ability to expand outwards so it's not confined to a space. We actually don't need to leave a gap, so I can cut it and cut it exact and piece it in. So normally I would come in here, I got a 130.25, and I would cut it at like 130.1/8, but I'm actually gonna cut it at 130.25 because expansion can be allowed outwards. All right. Nice and straight, ready for a metal roof. So we'll get our steel stacked up. We'll get it punched. Since we're going on the sheathing, we can punch our rows right on our purlins every 2 foot, and that's gonna go up lickety split. So let's do it. I like you going backwards. Makes it easier on me.
Yeah, I know.
I'm 10 years your senior, is that what they say? Or I'm 10 years senior, or I don't know, whatever, something like that. Yeah. Isn't that just beautiful? The mega deck. Just bring all the steel right up here with us. We'll get our punch rows done right here, and then one at a time, get them installed. I love this mega deck. Best investment I ever made. Next to Greg. Greg's a pretty good investment too. You're pretty good, Greg. Okay, so before we do these punches, you can see I just laid all these up here. They're definitely not perfect, so we're just gonna kind of lightly tap on these edges until we get them pretty good and lined up. They don't have to be perfect, but you can see now we got it good enough that we can make our punch row and it's gonna be a nice straight screw line. So our purlins are every 2 foot space, so we're marking out so that our screw rows hit the purlin rows, which is at 2 foot 2.5 from the sheet because the sheet hangs over. So we go 1.5 inches on an overhang, but we also have to worry about the fact that we have a 3/4 fascia, this trim. So actually by the time you get your steel out, it's about 2.5 inches up. So we'll go ahead and punch those. In fact, Greg, I think I'm gonna do also my bottom. So we're gonna go at 3 inches. Okay, so because this first sheet, the way the layout's got to work out, in order for this to work, two things. One, we had to shift this over and cut off this first rib, which typically we don't like to do, but it's going to be fine. The problem that I have specifically is that the ribs on the main roof will not line up perfectly with the ribs on the porch roof. I know it's blasphemous, it's horrible, it's poor planning on our part, but dimensionally it's where everything had to be, and with a 16-inch overhang, it just kind of messes things up. If we would have had a standard like 1 foot or 2 foot overhang, we would have been okay, but it is what it is. All right, so we've got our marks laid out for this steel, and because we know the roof is square, we framed it ourselves. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this on the mark and bring my edge right to 1.5 inches. That way that lines up where all my screws are gonna go. And Greg has got his marked up there as well. So that way when I come over here to this end down here, I'm also, as you can see by the tape measure, I'm at 1.5 inches. So that way I know I'm running square. I'm gonna screw the top, Greg will screw the bottom, and we'll just fly through this. Before when I lay this next one, I'm just gonna line up my edge. And then that should put me right on my mark. Just double check that I'm running at 1.5 inches. Greg, you're on your mark?
Yep.
Good to go, man. This is infinitely easier when you take the time to square up your framing. Because if your framing's not square, then you have to make your sheet square, and it can kind of be off compared to the roof, but it's got to be square to get a nice straight line. Okay. Now the reason that we leave this, I'll show you when we put it up, but there's a reason. We don't just cut this rib off. You always want something sticking up on the edge of your panel. Okay, you got that in, Greg? It's a little bit breezy. When we put this up, this last bent up rib, when we put our trim over top of it like this, it's gonna prevent any moisture, any water that's wind driven up underneath that trim potentially to go into your roof. So you really wanna make sure that if you're cutting your metal, don't just cut it and leave the flat, cut it about 1 inch or 3/4 long and do a bend up. You always wanna bend up there on your end. But anyway, roofing is simple, especially when your roof is square. This took us like, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to run, lay out, and really nothing to it. It's all in the prep, actually. Look at that nice line. And that took like very little effort because we laid it out properly, the roof was squared properly when we framed it, and it just fell into place. So, all right, a little bit of screwing, but that's the roof, and then we'll go on next to our gable trims and then our top trim, which we have the fillers for that. So while Greg's finishing off some screwing, I'm just prepping these gable trims. So I gotta put a 212 pitch where it goes against the wall. And I thought instead of cutting this off, I don't know that it really matters, but I'm gonna do a nice tight bend here. And it's just gonna give it a little bit more structure up against the wall so this metal doesn't flex when we put up our smart side and do some caulking next to it. So anyway, I gotta find my benders. They're right here. There, just like that. Yeah, I think that'll work. Just a little something extra. Okay. Because of the angle of the roof, this will be in the way. Okay. Here you go, big guy. Maybe you could go in more. Yeah. Right there. We're about a strong 1/8 away from
like
1/8, something like that. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. So what I'm doing is I'm looking right in here. So when you look up into this place, I'm looking at this plane, making sure that it looks like it's not, you know, one way or the other. And then in and out, I'm also looking at this angle here. So I just kind of eyeball it, and then this will all get bent and covered up. So I like mine. Let me put a screw in mine, Greg. And then, yeah, Greg, I like it. And then I'm just gonna double check this, make sure I like it. And I'll just screw it in place. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this off. So we're gonna come out 1.25 inches, square this around, 1.5 inches. Now, what I'm gonna do, we're gonna make this little notch, cut this off. Okay, simple bend down here, nice bend down here, which we don't even have to worry about that. What's gonna happen here is the gutter is gonna sit in here, and this, I leave this a little bit long because it actually just caps the gutter. So it's just, it might look a little weird right now, but that's what that's for. When the gutter gets put on, it looks good, and this is gonna drip down into the gutter. Yeah, I don't know, just a simple bend with the gable trim, and we'll get it screwed off at each screw line, do the same thing on the other end. But I think now you can see this up here, what that little bend out did. It's just gonna go, and I could actually put some tape there just for a little bit of connection to the wall, and it's gonna keep that nice and solid when we go around it with our SmartSide. Okay, get yours up where you think it goes. In, yeah, maybe something like that. So this piece of trim right here, this is our roof to wall flashing. So we just call it connection flashing, so it's connecting the roof to wall. Makes sense, right? It's gonna go over the roof, gonna go up the wall, and it's gonna get covered by siding. So it'll be like our flashing, and any water that gets here runs down the roof. This end is gonna be going over our gable trim that we just put on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a quick mark at 1.25 inches, and get my little Martinez Mini because my big one's just a little bit too big. And what we're gonna do is put a bend right here. So let's get greens. We can make a slit in, and then a slight triangle slit, and that'll come into play because when it bends over, if I leave that, it will hit the wall. Learned that one a couple times. And anytime you're making a bend, these benders are not big enough for 1.25 inches. I forgot that. All right, we're gonna grab a different bender. Be right back. All right, now we're back. We got the bigger 9-inch Melcos. They got a deeper throat, so I can easily get this whole thing at one time. Actually, I just thought of something. We've got a hem here. So a hem is anytime you got like a full 180 bend on your metal. We don't really want that for the bend over. So what we're gonna do is come in here and we're just gonna notch it off. Hems don't make for good bends. Now we can come in here, line it up. Gotta push down on that bend, and then boom, we got a nice crisp 90, and this is what's gonna wrap around the top of the roof, and time to install it. All right, there ain't a lot of room to work here, but we've got to get a mark right where our flashing is gonna be. So we're gonna make a 6-inch mark here. Not that anybody's gonna be able to get into the position to make sure that this trim is straight and perfect, but we wanna try to do our best. So we got a 6-inch mark. What?
Make it easier for us.
I think it will. All right, buddy. This is gonna be blowing in the wind, so.
I want to be over there.
Over here? Which way is it going? This way? Yeah. Okay, go ahead. All right. Now what that's gonna allow us to do is have a good line to visually put our trim to, but also these guys. These are a outside closure, and they're gonna go right up and over all these ribs, close it off so that any wind-driven rain, snow can't go up in there. If it does, which it won't, we've still got our ice and water and everything that's gonna protect this whole roof underneath this. So now you can see maybe this guy, that bend we made. This trim is gonna go up here. We're gonna have to lay down. And this is gonna go nice and snug right up against here, and it's gonna hit the 6-inch mark that we left. So, oh, this is awkward. Got to bring out the Milwaukee right angle drill, and that is literally, Greg, like perfect. Okay. We're just gonna snug these down. As long as we keep it nice and tight against the back, I'm just gonna kind of do like every other one right now, Greg. Yep. Now you should also be able to see the filler strip that Greg put in there. It solidly blocks off this opening here. It's got an adhesive down to the roof, so it's not going anywhere. And then we're also screwing like right through it. Okay, so wherever we have a connection, we're just gonna come back about 6 inches, and we're gonna cut a nice triangle slice out. And that's gonna cut that hem off so we can get a nice connection lap. And then we're also going to use some Lexel. Stuff's awesome, sticks to anything. Good workability on colder or warmer temperatures. If this was a darker roof, I might even use through the roof. Right there, Greg. Okay. Now, eventually I'm gonna put a nail, but for now, because I don't have any nails, oh, that's really awkward. No big deal. Let's get it a little less awkward. But just to keep this joint tight so that this adhesive can cure. There, I like it. It's a little install driver, man. That's a handy little guy. Really does come in handy. All right, guys, battery is about to die on the camera. We got nothing left, but luckily we got basically this roof done. We got the porch ceiling done, and we've got one more porch behind, if you remember, that we're gonna go ahead and just set the camera up, run some time lapse, and we'll put that in at the end of this video. But hopefully enjoy that, and we're gonna have SmartSide coming up, so if you guys are excited to see how this thing turns out, what the outside is gonna look like when it's finished, definitely follow along because that's coming up pretty darn quickly, and hopefully we can share everything with you guys, share you some tips and tricks on siding install. It's gonna look awesome, so stick around, hit the subscribe button, and if you enjoyed the porch video, make sure you hit that thumbs up. But with that, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here, guys. Have a good one. We'll catch you on the next video.